What's up YouTube? Welcome back to the garage. Welcome back to another great project for the Hyundai Accent. We actually kind of got the project started, kind of just got the first things first out the way, which is removing the tires, because what we're going to be doing today are the rear brake drums. So yes, this 2014 Hyundai Accent, like you guys already know, is the very base model. So unfortunately it doesn't have disc brakes all around. It's got the discs up front, but in the back, as you can see, they're drums. Drums are notorious for being difficult to get off, so let's cross our fingers on this one. As you can see, what I did on a previous day was actually take off the wheels and make my first attempts at it, but it didn't go so well, so I kind of put a little bit of anti-seize just so I can get the tire off really easily for this specific video. I found some new tricks that were given to me by one of the guys from AutoZone. I'm trying to get these guys off. So you'll see those today, and hopefully it works. So just as a real quick overview of the parts you're going to need for this guy here, pretty much I'm actually going to be doing a full swap. This guy has just under 100,000 miles on it, and I doubt that the rear brake shoes have been changed ever since, on top of the fact that it seems pretty rusty in there. So I went ahead and ordered myself a pair of brake shoes, which are those over there, and also the brake drums themselves. That would be similar to the discs, and this will be similar to the pads, but we got everything we need. So then of course you just need your extra accessories, which is of course brake grease, some anti-seize will come in handy, of course a whole bunch of brake clean, and I got some PB blaster. Hopefully if there's any rusted parts, this will help us get that off. And of course a little drain pan. We're going to put this underneath the drum when we start spraying a whole bunch of stuff on it, so we can collect all that gunk that's going to be falling and it won't get on the floors. So without further ado, let's go ahead and jump right in, start trying to figure out how to get these drums off. So before you actually start trying to take the drums off, one thing you want to make sure is that you have the parking brake off, because it's going to make it impossible to get off otherwise. And then second, of course, as you already know, you have to have the back of the vehicle up in the air. So yeah, we're good to go there. So let's get going. So first thing first, to take this brake drum off, you're going to actually have to undo this little Phillips screw here. I actually already had pre-unloosened it, just using like the screwdriver, kind of pushing in and using a wrench to turn it. But now that it's already pre-loosened, you simply will just take this out and set it aside. Alright guys, so I actually removed my external mic because I needed the camera to fit into some tight quarters. So hopefully the audio looks good for the rest of the video. But essentially, after you take off that screw from the outside of the drum, you're going to make your way to the back side. And what we're going to be looking for is this little rubber grommet right here. And essentially that gives us a little window or access port to the internals of the drum. There's a little bar in there, if you can imagine, that holds the brake shoes out towards the edge at a certain distance. That little adjuster could be putting just enough tension on those shoes to prevent you from pulling this drum off. And it's going to be kind of hard to see on camera. You're going to be looking for like a little spinning bolt or a nut. Then you're going to take a flathead screwdriver, fidget your way in there, and then try to loosen it up. You're going to want to move this little lever in there, which I'll kind of show you from a diagram from the manual. That lever is designed to hold it in place and prevent it from loosening. And there's going to be one way which it'll allow you to just continue to click. You don't want to go that way because that's actually going to push them outwards. Push that lever aside, spin the sprocket the other way, and then loosen those shoes inward so that you release the tension from the drum. So I went ahead and took out my bore scope. So what we're actually looking right now is on the inside of that little access port, which is on the back. That's the little sprocket or the little screw that I'm loosening with the screwdriver. And if you can't really see in the back, you can see the top part of the lever, as well as on the screw or the sprocket itself. You can see they're kind of like teeth, kind of like a chainsaw. One way where the lever can slide over easily and lock into place, and the other way where it'll prevent it from spinning. Well, like I said earlier, we have to force that sprocket to turn in a leftward or counterclockwise direction in order to loosen the shoes back inward, and then that will relieve the tension on the shoes themselves. So I'm going to keep on going ahead and trying this out, but we'll keep going until it gets all the way loose, or as far as we can, and we'll be good to go. Now that we spun it, those shoes should be just slightly loosened up a little bit in here. So next up, we're going to try to get this guy from the front side. So most likely there's going to be on the inside of this here where the drum makes contact with the hub, some rust. So we're actually just going to tap on it with the hammer right in between the lugs. Make sure you don't hit the lugs so you don't damage the threads. But we're going to tap right in the middle, hopefully release some of that rust, hopefully make it easier for us to pull this off just after that. So I'm going to go ahead and get tapping, and we'll see what happens. Y'all probably can't hear it, but actually while I was tapping, it started making a little bit different noise, a little bit more of a hollow noise, which I believe means that it's starting to release from the hub surface. So I'll try to give it a pull here. And there we go. As you saw, I got a little bit bigger hammer, not too much bigger, but then it released itself, and now I can carefully take off the drum. What you want to make sure is you're not pulling off the shoes behind it, which I'm not. Look at that. There we go. So now that I got the brake drum off, guys, you can now see on the inside just where it was rusted onto that hub surface. Normally, if you're going to reuse your drums, you would just want to kind of like use a little wire brush. Make sure you're doing it outside so you don't breathe in any of that dust. But use like a wire brush to kind of clean off that, and then you would follow it up with some anti-seize. But since we have new drums over there, I don't have to worry about it. Another thing that you would note about these drums, if you do reuse them, is that they have a max diameter listed, similar to the discs where there's a minimum wear thickness. This is a diameter because obviously the shoes are on the inside, so it'll wear outwards. So if you have a special caliper or long enough caliper, you'd actually measure just how wide this diameter is. And if it's any wider than, in this case, 205.2 millimeters, you would know that your drum is bad. Back over at your drum, here's where the fun part is. And also this is where you need that bucket here, because you're going to start to drip a whole bunch of crud out of this inner surface, because drums are, as you saw, like encapsulated. So a lot of this dust and stuff stays inside. So this is where you're going to hit it with some brake clean, get it all nice and cleaned up before we start disassembling things, and that'll make it so much easier and so much cleaner to get this done. So I'm going to go ahead and start spraying. So now that we got everything nice and cleaned up and we got the drum removed, you can get a better look at what I was actually unscrewing earlier from behind through that little access port. Right in here, just behind that spring, you can see that adjustment lever, which is that silver bar going across. And right here, not sure if you can see it, but it looks like you may, there's that little sprocket or that little screw there. And that's what holds these pads outwards, which when you turned it the way I turned it earlier, it'll bring them in and allow you to take the drum off. Now that we got everything cleaned up, we're going to go ahead and disassemble. One thing I recommend, if this is new to you, which it is to me, take a picture. So I'm going to go ahead and take a whole bunch of pictures right now from a bunch of different angles, just so I know when it's time to reassemble where everything goes and how it looks. Alright, so first thing we're going to go ahead and take off is this upper return spring, which is this black one here. There's special tools that you can use, but I'm just going to get some needle noses and pull them off the little edges that it's hooked on. As you can see, it's hooked on to one of the shoes there and hooked on to the other shoe there. So yeah, let's go ahead and remove that. There we go. There's that spring. Next up, we're going to go ahead and remove the lower return spring, which is this one down here. There we go, got that one. Now we need to remove the shoe hold springs and the pins. There's actually two of them. There's one here and there's one over here on the other side. So how you remove them is essentially you'll push in on the spring towards the inside of the drum, and then these pins, you can see they fit into the groove kind of like a T. So the groove is long ways like this, and the pin is also long ways like this. So they're slid in and they're turned sideways. So essentially we're going to push that little spring in to get that pin to be able to have some clearance to turn it back straight and slide it out. So that's what I'm going to go ahead and do. Push in, turn sideways, and there you go. there's your spring, and there's one of your pins. And go ahead and do that for both sides, and you'll be good to go to move on to the next step. So now from up top, we'll go ahead and remove the adjuster here, and it just should come right out from the top. There you go. That'll work. If it comes out in two pieces, that's perfectly fine, because that's exactly how it sits. As you see, there's one side here, this is the screw, and this side literally just sits in there without really any resistance. So if that comes off, don't worry. But there's your two pieces. Take note of how it sits inside of there. Not only how it sits, but where the grooves are. As you can see, it's not a straight cut groove on either side. So just keep in mind how it was. Again, I just took a bunch of pictures, so I won't forget. Now you should be able just to remove the shoes themselves. Starting with this one here, I'm going to remove, keep in mind we're on the driver's side right now, so this is the one that's on the front side of the drum. So you just lift up, slide it out of place. This guy has the little lever assembly on it. You're actually going to reuse this guy, so keep that and set it aside. Once again, just take a photo and note the orientation of the spring and the lever. So now we'll remove the other shoe here. This is a shoe that's going to have the parking brake on it, the parking brake cable. So when you take it off, you'll see here there's a little bracket that comes with the shoes, and down here there's your little parking brake. So in order to take off the parking brake, you're simply just going to pull back on this spring here. Hopefully you guys can see it. Pull back on that spring, relieve some of that tension, slide up and over. There's a little washer there, so you got to make sure that washer goes with it. So I'm going to turn it this way. Make sure it goes up and over that lip. Almost there, that washer up and over that lip, and there you go. So there's your other shoe. Now that I got everything removed, I'm gonna go ahead and kind of clean this guy up. I'm gonna hit it with some brake clean everywhere, as well as maybe just take a small little brush and just get some of the loose dirt off of it here and there. And yeah, I think we'll just make this guy as nice and clean as possible and get ready to reassemble. So I did like a little side-by-side comparison here, just so you guys see the condition that the old drums were in comparison to the new ones. The drums themselves, as you can see, extremely rusted all the way around everywhere. This vehicle actually used to be in New York, where in New York, as well as other cold climates, they use a lot of salt on the roads and things like that. And salt and metal don't mix at all, and everything will just rust a whole lot. So that's exactly what happened here, which is why I went ahead and go ahead and replace it to the new drums, which, as you can see, it's nice, beautiful, clean, and ready to go. Jumping down here to the pads themselves, as you can see, there was still actually a decent amount of pad material left. I'd say about a 1/8 of an inch, maybe a little bit less than 1/8 of an inch. It's still something that I wanted to go ahead and replace, just so I don't have to worry about it. So coming over here to the new shoes, definitely over an 1/8 of an inch, probably a little bit closer to 1/4 of an inch pad material, and it's just a whole lot cleaner. So what I'm going to go ahead and do is spray this down with some brake clean to remove any type of oils that they may have on this, just in case they put it on there just for storage purposes. And then we'll get ready to start putting this stuff back on. So back over here at the vehicle, now that we've got everything nice and cleaned up and ready to go, first things first, we're going to go ahead and lubricate some of the contact points, which are going to be difficult to get to once we have the shoes in place. So there's actually 6 points right here back on the dust shield, which are all the way around. I'll put a little picture up just to kind of show you a little diagram or a picture of what I'm looking at. But yeah, those 6 contact points, you can't miss them. They stand out just from everything else that's on here. You want to apply some brake grease there. And don't worry, this won't make it to the actual pad surface. This is just one of the contacting areas. So on all 6 locations, go ahead and apply a decent amount there. And there you go. As you can see on the top part, there's the 4 locations there, and there's also 2 more down here at the bottom. Next up, we're going to go ahead and reinstall the brake line back onto the shoe. So this is where you'll refer back to your photos. Remember what orientation you had the brake shoe in and relevant to where the brake line is. So yeah, what we're going to do is just go ahead and I'm going to pull up that spring over here, get it clipped back into the little hole that it normally was in, and we'll move on to the next part. Alright guys, now that we've got the e-brake line back connected to the shoe, we're going to go ahead and put the shoes back in. So you'll go ahead and set them in place and then get ready to put the pins in from the back, and then you'll push them through the springs. So yeah, just watch what I do here. Alright, so now we have the shoe sitting in place with the pin coming through. So now you need to push the spring back on. So you'll have to orient the pin so that that little notch is facing straight up and down like it is on here. So then you'll slide the larger side of the pin to the back and the thinner side to the front. Slide it on there, and probably be easier to do this with a screwdriver or a needle nose, but then you'll depress that spring like so. And there we go. Got one in. Had to push it in with the screwdriver and then turn it from the back side to make it go horizontal. But that's one pin in, and we'll go ahead and install the other side as well. Hopefully you can see up close what I did there with that pin in the spring. But the little notch in the pin, as you can see, once you push the spring down over that notch, you turn it sideways so that it's perpendicular to the spring's hole, and it locks itself in place. So then you do that on both sides and it'll hold them there. So next up, we're going to start installing this adjuster here. But first things first, you want to kind of unscrew this guy just a little bit. You're going to clean the threads real good with maybe a small brush and some brake clean. And then you're going to apply a little bit of that same synthetic brake grease to the threads. Maybe a little bit in here as well, since this is a moving surface. And that'll be it. So go ahead and clean those off, and then we'll get ready to install it. So now that you got the threads nice and cleaned and lubed, once again, refer back to your photos so you can make sure you have this in the correct orientation when you're installing it back in. But that's pretty much exactly what we're going to do. One thing you want to do is screw this guy back in. So yeah, we'll go ahead and get it installed, and I'll show you what I did up close. Alright, and as you can see, I got it installed in place. I kind of had to adjust the screw there in the middle just to kind of have it hold itself there. So now we'll move on to the next part, and pretty soon here it'll all just hold itself together. Now we're going to go ahead and install the shoe adjustment lever, and once again, refer back to your photos. Now you can see why it's very important to take pictures, because it can get real confusing, especially with all these small components. So what we're going to do is put this in the hole that it's supposed to go in, and make sure that the top of this adjustment lever fits just behind the edge corner of the push rod, which is the thing that we just put in right there. The left end of that was called the push rod, and you'll see that right here there's a little space for it. So again, just make sure it goes behind there. Next up, go ahead and install the adjuster lever spring, which connects onto the spring and down into this little hole here on the left shoe. Once again, you're going to get tired of hearing me say it. Refer back to your photos to make sure you're doing this correctly. There we go. Next up, we're going to go ahead and install the upper return spring from this hole over here all the way over to that hole way down there. It's going to be under a lot of spring tension, so be careful when you're doing this. And if you have any questions, go back to your photos. Last but not least, you're going to go ahead and start the lower one. And as you can see, the actual hooks on the spring are off to one side. So as always, go back to your photos just to make sure you have this in the correct orientation. So now that you got everything back and reassembled, there's a few spots that you want to make sure you grease up with the same brake grease, and that's going to start up right up here at the top where the shoes make contact with the wheel cylinder on both sides. Down here where the little adjustment lever is just behind the adjustment rod, as you can see here. All those contacting surfaces, you want to do it in there, as well as where those little lips or the little grabbers of the adjustment rod are inside there. You can lube those as well. I just used a toothpick or a little Q-tip just to kind of get the grease down to where it needs to be and not everywhere else. And same thing here at the bottom, right here where the shoes make contact with the rest of the wheel drum. Go ahead and grease that up, and you should be good to go there. So that's pretty much it. What I'm going to do before I actually put back on the drum, right here where the hub surface will make contact with the inside of the drum, I'm going to coat this area with a little bit of anti-seize just so it doesn't rust up next time we have to take this guy off. So now it's time to install the new drum, which is what we have here. Only thing you got to really make sure is that you line up the screw hole in the hub with the screw hole here in the drum itself. So we'll go ahead and slide that on. If it doesn't go on right away, what you can do is reach in there to that little adjustment knob again and loosen it up just a little bit so that the brake pads come in, and then go ahead and try it again. And as you can tell, it's really tight, so I'm just going to keep trying to work it on there because there's so much new material for both the brake shoes as well as the brake drum itself. So you'll probably run into a little bit of issue just getting it on, but don't worry, keep going and try to push it on there. It will get on there.
A few minutes later.
There we go. I think that guy's done. So now that's on there, go ahead and screw in that screw that you removed earlier. So now that we're done with this guy, we're gonna go ahead and jump onto the other side. I'll do that off camera and we'll actually meet back in the car because we're gonna do one more thing in there. So I'll see you guys here in a second. So now we jumped inside the car, and if you can't tell where I'm looking just behind the e-brake handle or the emergency brake handle. And down here there's a little flap which just comes up. It's not glued in or anything, so when you lift this up, you now see where your parking brake cables are. So there's one on the right side which goes to the right brake, one on the left side which goes to the left brake, and in the middle, if you can see there, there's a little nut. So that nut is what we're going to be messing with right now. It's a little adjustment nut. You'll adjust that nut using a 12mm wrench. So what we need this guy per the service manual is to actually be adjusted so that there will be 5 to 7 clicks where it'll be fully engaged. It even gives you a specific number saying that about 44 pounds of pressure should get you to those 5 to 7 clicks. Even more important, you just don't want your parking and your brakes to be riding against the drums while you're driving. Adjust this accordingly and loosen that nut so that it's not happening. So I'm gonna go ahead and do that now, loosen it up a little bit and see how it works. Alright, so now I got it adjusted to the way I want it, guys. It's not rubbing when I have it all the way down, and it clicks just about the same amount of clicks as before, which is 5 to 7, and it doesn't take too much force, but it's just enough to make sure you know it's good. 1 2 3 4 5. That's pretty tight. I'll probably go 6 myself, but I think we're good to go. And just like that, guys, you successfully changed your rear drum brakes on your 2014 Hyundai Accent. I hope you found this video very enjoyable, guys. I hope you found it beneficial. I hope it makes you a lot more confident if you do decide to take on this task yourself. Save a whole bunch of money, trust me. I'm gonna go ahead and get this garage cleaned up, get ready for the next project, which we have plenty more to come. So be sure to hit that subscribe button below and turn on your notifications so you don't miss out. But as always, guys, thank you for watching Everything Avron. I'm Avron. I'll see y'all in the next one.